I'm gonna have to come right out and say it. I think this banner for 3.6, the 4 stars that have been released on it, are some of the best characters that we could think of for a free-to-play player, maybe even a new player in Genshin Impact. Now we have Nahida rerunning as well as Nilou, but the 4 stars that we can see here, well, 2 of them are fantastic for you. And the 2 different 5 stars, while Nilou is still a very powerful character and we'll touch on her in this video, she's a little bit more niche than a lot of the other characters in Genshin Impact because, well, to use her effectively, you're limited to just Hydro and Dendro characters, whereas the other one here, Nahida, listen, Dendro has so many powerful teams. In Nahida, while you'll find some people who could rightfully say that there's so many good Dendro characters that she's not a must-have character, she is so good to have access to on your account just with the way that she works. Now, Nahida has been my go-to Dendro DPS, support DPS, whatever character all-star for a long time, and it's because she's just so easy to build. I have her at level 90 at 596 talent level, and we have Constellation 0 on this character. We're also not using crazy 5-star weapons on her. We're using actually a 4-star, pretty widely available weapon in the form of the Widsith. This thing is insane for her. And while it might seem like she needs a ton of stats, she actually gets a lot of benefit out of so many stats in Genshin Impact, the mainstay one being Elemental Mastery, and that's because of her elemental skill, All Schemes to Know. Now, we're not going to break all of this down. Basically, what this skill does is make her an amazing applier of Dendro as the element, but it also makes her a very good damage dealer. And this is because of the ability for Tri-Karma Purification, which is something that will trigger whether she's on the battlefield or off the battlefield, and it lasts 25 seconds due to the debuff that you put on called the Seed of Skandha. And as you can see here, it scales not just off attack, but also off of Elemental Mastery. And this is going to be the reason why she is just so easy to build. She gets so much benefit from Elemental Mastery, it's not funny, because this is her main damage dealing skill. You don't need to worry about a ton of energy recharge on her because, well, it is 50 energy cost and it has a 13.5 second cooldown, but it has a 15-second base duration, and you can actually increase this duration by adding Hydro characters to a lot of the teams that you're putting Nahida in. And this is going to be something you're doing all the time because, well, Hydro and Dendro, they go together like bread and butter. But back to more on this Elemental Mastery. Yes, this thing's going to help out not just her damage on scaling here and not just her reaction damage, but she's also going to benefit from it from her Ascension talent, Compassion Illuminated. This is going to give Elemental Mastery bonus to other characters or even herself if she's on the field, equivalent to 25% of the EM of the member of your party with the highest amount of Elemental Mastery. So now we're getting even further bonus from EM, getting even more EM to go into our Tri-Karma Purification damage, and there's one more thing here that we didn't talk about. Her second Ascension is also dealing with Elemental Mastery, so every point of EM you have above 200 is going to get you damage bonus to her elemental skills trigger, Tri-Karma Purification, as well as crit rate. You can get up to 80% damage bonus and 24 crit chance from this Ascension here as well. This is why she's so easy to build, because Elemental Mastery is scaling up all of your reaction damage, scaling up the All Schemes to Know trigger damage, as well as your crit chance for it, as well as damage bonus on top of that as well. And if you want to use her as a support DPS role or even a main DPS role, you're going to get even more Elemental Mastery because you're putting Elemental Mastery on her. You're going to get 25% of that, and it's pretty easy to cap out this 24 crit rate bonus and 80% damage bonus because, well, you need an extra 800 Elemental Mastery. Now, as you see here, we don't have the full 800 Elemental Mastery at 684, but the fantastic Widsith strikes again because this can give you a trigger when you enter the battlefield for 10 seconds once every 30 seconds, attack percent increase, which further increases the damage of All Schemes to Know's trigger, Tri-Karma Purification. You can also gain access to, look at that, elemental damage bonus to increase the damage bonus of her elemental skill, or Elemental Mastery of 480. All of these things are fantastic for her, and it's all on a nice little 4-star weapon. She is a magnificent character for your Dendro reaction teams. It allows you to be super flexible. I've used her in Shatterbloom teams. I've used her with the character we're talking about next. And Nahida's already broken at Constellation 0, but Constellation 1, listen, this is going to increase the Shrine of Maya effect based on the different sort of elemental characters in your party. If you go back and you look at the Shrine of Maya, certain things are increased, like the damage bonus of her elemental skill proc ability to the interval triggers of her elemental skill proc ability, or even the duration of her elemental burst can get increased here as well. And this is all based on how many different Pyro, Electro, and Hydro characters you have. If you have a Constellation 1, they're all going to get increased by 1 for you right away. And then Constellation 2, if you really want to break the game and you really want to have the most AFK easiest time in Genshin Impact, you can have this as well, which is going to allow your Burning Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon reactions to critically hits, and they always have 100 crit damage with 20 crit rate, which is going to increase the damage you do. Periodically, 1 out of every 5 is going to do double the damage it would before. So if you're used to seeing 25, 30,000 damage blooms, then 20% of the time you're going to be hitting blooms for 60,000 damage. Why? I don't know, but it's here. As long as you have Constellation 2, it will absolutely break the game. But let's not leave out Quick and Aggravate and Spread. If you don't want to play Bloom, you have this as well. Anyone hit by these reactions will have their defense decreased by 30%, which is a huge deal. So if you are someone who's in there and you love Nahida, or you're just now getting to it, if you want to break the game wide open, it's not necessary. You shouldn't do it because Genshin's not a difficult game. I had a comment saying it's a casual adventure experience, which I don't disagree with necessarily, but C1 and C2 for Nahida as well are absolutely mind-blowing constellations, and some of the strongest I've seen for a character at C1 and C2 for a very long time. Kuki Shinobu, who's also a fantastic character and an excellent free-to-play option. So let's talk about this as well. Kuki Shinobu here is one of the easiest characters to build a team around. If you're working on a secondary team, maybe you don't know what to do as a free-to-play player for your secondary Abyss team, Dendro team with Kuki Shinobu in it, as well as a Hydro character like Xingqiu as a 4-star, is a fantastic way to go. And she's also very low investment. You just need to level her up as high as you can, 70, 80, 90 eventually, because she's going to be a healer and reaction damage dealer for your team as well. You don't even really need to level up her talents that much either, and she's super easy to build. You basically just build her with as much elemental mastery, maybe a tiny bit of energy recharge. You don't really necessarily need it though. Just elemental mastery, a little bit of HP as well, because she's going to be the character proccing all of your Dendro cores, and we're going to be making a Hyper Bloom team with Kuki Shinobu as well. Don't be afraid of seeing this 5-star weapon on her. Jade Cutter is actually kind of bad for her. I just kind of like how it looks. No, one of the best ways to build her is actually with a 4-star crafted weapon that's very easy to access. The Iron Sting, giving us more elemental mastery, because that is what we're doing with this character, stacking elemental mastery on her so she can proc Hyper Bloom in our teams. And she is a mainstay Hyper Bloom character. She got much better after Dendro was introduced. Back when Dendro wasn't really a element in Genshin, she was released to not a lot of fanfare. If you find a lot of old videos on her, you might see that she's underwhelming or bad. And I think I remember even saying when she came out, she wasn't really necessary, didn't seem to be anything cool for any sort of playstyles at the time, but I did notice that she was unique in the fact that she was the only Electro healer in the game, and it's finally come full circle because she's just tailored to these Dendro related reactions where you have, you know, Hyper Bloom teams that she's the sole focus in. You can also put her in an Aggravate / Quicken team as well, and this is going to be based on, well, some of her ascensions, because her bread and butter is the Sanctifying Ring, which is going to be a ring that has a pretty long duration of 12 seconds with a 15-second cooldown at Constellation 0, and it's going to be a way for you to heal your team. You might be saying, well, we're stacking elemental mastery and this heals based off of health. How are we healing with Kuki Shinobu in these teams? Let's take a look at our awesome 2 ascensions here. So the second ascension here is Heart's Repose. The healing that you do is increased by 75% of your elemental mastery. And the damage that you do with her is also going to be increased by 25% of your elemental mastery, which means that you can build her strictly for elemental mastery and have her be your healer for the party as well as proccing a bunch of hyper blooms for huge damage at the same time. It's very easy to just build her up with one stat, EM, and get in there and do a bunch of damage. That is a very good thing for a free-to-play player because you don't need the most cracked artifacts in the world. Just find stuff with Elemental Mastery main stat on your Sands, on your Circlet, and on your Goblet as well, and then try to find some Elemental Mastery substat gear as well when you're first joining the fray with Genshin Impact. I'm sorry, friend, I can't do it right now. We'll have to get flowers later. I'm sorry. And you don't need to farm up any specific sets at the start either. Something like the Flower of Paradise Lost is a fantastic set, but you can just get in there with some beginner gear, get the right main sets, the right substats, and it's going to be a very good time for you. Eventually, you'll be able to move on to some other sets like the Gilded Dreams set here, which is going to be a bunch of elemental mastery for you as well. And this is a very good domain to farm up because a lot of different characters can use the Gilded Dreams set, or it can use the other artifact set that drops in here as well. And all of that still at Constellation 0. There's some good constellations for her as well in the form of her Constellation 2, which isn't necessary, but it's going to increase the duration of her elemental skill from that 12-second duration, 15-second cooldown, up to a 15-second duration, 15-second cooldown, so you can have this active at all times. Not necessary, but it is still something to think about. Maybe you're a free-to-play player and you're interested in having Nahida and you're wondering if having constellations at the first couple of them anyway for Shinobu are worthwhile. Yes, C1's going to increase the AoE of her elemental burst. C2 gives you 100% uptime on your elemental skill. So even if you already have access to a Kuki Shinobu on your account, you're still looking forward to Nahida, or you're still looking forward to Nilou, C1 and C2 are still fantastic for her. So we have two very easy to build characters that are just extremely powerful in the way that they work. There's a lot of low investment, high power that you can get between both Kuki Shinobu as well as Nahida. Now, another one on the banner is actually going to be Layla, and I actually love Layla quite a lot. I view her as like the Cryo 4-star sort of Zhongli, and this is just because she's got Knights of Formal Focus, which is a set it and forget it Zhongli style shield. You hit the button, it's got a 12-second cooldown. This shield lasts 12-second duration, and so as long as you just build her for giant health, you're gonna have a extremely powerful shield to protect whatever sort of team that you want to have access to in Genshin. If you're a big fan of shielders, you don't have Zhongli, you don't have enough primogems to pull for them, Layla's pretty awesome. You can use her in freeze teams, you can use her in fridge teams. She's a fantastic character. I don't think she's like broken, but she still is very good, and you will not regret having her on your account, playing around with what she can do, falling asleep in front of your enemies, applying cryo everywhere with her Dream of the Star Stream, a shaker, which is basically a mini Gani wall as well, which doesn't do as much damage, but it still does a decent amount of damage. If you're looking for someone to protect your team, have someone that is a fantastic, if not the best, support to wear the tenacity of the Millith set to protect your team and also boost up the shield strength of her shields and the attack of the party members being protected by her shields. You just can't really go wrong with this character in the form of Layla, and that's at Constellation 0. If you want to get more constellations for her, you can shield other people in co-op environments. You can have her do more damage over time, but none of that is necessary. It's just if you want the big set it and forget it shield, she's a good character to have on your account. Now, there are a couple of bad things about this banner as well. Number one, I'm not here to absolutely dumpster on a character, but Dori is on here too, and Dori, out of all of the different 4 stars, the 5 stars, listen, Dori is a little bit overlooked in Genshin, and I'm not saying you can't do cool things with your favorite character, but as far as free-to-play, primogem value, whatever, Dori's a character that you should probably avoid if given the chance. So we do have 2 Electro characters on it. Hopefully you guys get Kuki Shinobu or Layla. I love those characters. They're some of the better 4 stars that we've seen in the past year. So those are very, very good characters for the current meta, as you will, in Genshin Impact. Lastly, let's talk about Nilou real quick, because Nilou is a very strong character, but I will say this one thing about her. But Nilou's problem here is that unless you enjoy playing just Dendro and just Hydro characters, just those ones, you're not going to get the full value from this character, because the character's full value literally comes from Court of Dancing Petals, her Ascension. When all characters in the party are all Dendro or Hydro, only then will this activate. And this is where you're going to get her ability to perform and generate Bountiful Cores, which is a stronger version of the Bloom reaction. If you don't do this, if you have maybe 2 Dendro, 1 Hydro, and 1 Electro character, none of this works. You have to have only Hydro and Dendro characters, which is a pretty big downside in some players' experiences in creating teams in Genshin Impact. Because if you're investing in Nilou as a low spender, free-to-play player, new player, just to try her out and you find out that you don't like her, or maybe you do like her, any other character that comes out in Genshin Impact, unless they're a Dendro character or a Hydro character, they will automatically be a character that you cannot run with your Nilou, which could be a very big downside for you. Not to say that she's bad, she's actually very powerful in a lot of different teams, but you've seen all these different Dendro teams, Hyper Bloom, Fridge, Shatter Bloom, Virgin, all of these different teams, you cannot use Nilou in and benefit from her Ascension ability because they all include an extra element. They're not just Dendro and Hydro. But if you enjoy that playstyle and you already know that's what you're getting into, then go for her. She's a fantastic character. Just know that she's one of the most restrictive characters that we've seen to be implemented in the game in quite a while. And then to touch on the weapons real quick, we have the key as well as 1,000 floating dreams. These weapons are both pretty dang good. The 1,000 floating dreams and the key, first off, the key is going to be a weapon for any HP scaling sword user. It's going to be a fine weapon to have access to. Swords have a lot of free-to-play options, which is why these characters are also pretty good as 4 stars, because you don't necessarily feel like you're losing out on a ton of power if you don't gain access to their weapons. But this is a nice supportive option for a Nilou build. You could also use this on someone like, well, Kuki Shinobu as well. So it's a pretty decent weapon to have access to. If you gain access to it, you won't be too upset. Outside of this, though, we also have the 1,000 floating dreams, which is a nice weapon for Nilou, has elemental mastery on it, which we've talked about. It's going to give you bonus damage on your elemental skill because this is a multiplier for it. It also going to give you free crit chance and elemental damage bonus as well due to her second ascension. And it also has elemental mastery for her first ascension, which is going to help you give 25% more elemental mastery to yourself if you're on the field or everyone else as well. Whoever's your active character is going to benefit from this as well. And that's just from the elemental mastery stat. It's got 5-star base attack on it, which is nice. And then the refinement ability, listen, we're going to get either elemental mastery as a bonus, or we're going to get damage bonus from this as well. Either of these things are nice. It's just a giant stat stick for your Nahida or any other Catalyst character that wants to have a combination of elemental mastery as well as elemental damage bonus at the same time. However, don't feel bad if you don't get this for your Nahida. There's a lot of solid 4-star weapon options for you there. None other than the beautiful Widsith here, because, well, the Widsith has a giant proc that's increasing either your attack or your elemental damage or your elemental mastery. So this is like a 4-star, like steroid buff version of the 1,000 floating dreams for Nahida. So this banner is actually looking pretty good. There's a lot of options for both low spenders, free-to-play players. They're all powerful, easy to build, high access characters. You guys let me know what you're thinking about this banner down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.